唔該晒。
Good, we just formed a quorum.
夠人啦，咁樣我哋可以。
We formed a quorum. Please invite the deputations and also representatives of the government to come in.
及時趕到。所以有團體嚟呢，就有啲壓力嘅。平時開會流會都唔好，有團體嚟話會就仲肉酸。好，早晨。
Good morning.
Good
morning. Thank you very much for attending the subcommittee on the buildings legislation amendment, ordinance, commencement notice, and building minor notice, minor works amendment regulations 2013. We have some deputations to give us their views this morning. Welcome. I'd like to welcome the following representatives from the government. We have Mr. Rex Cheng, Deputy Chairman for Development from the Development Bureau, and also Mr. Ryan Chiu, PAS from the same bureau, Ms. Irene Zhang from the same bureau, Assistant Secretary, and also from the Buildings Department, Mr. He White, Deputy Director, Mr. Alex Chow, Assistant Director, Mr. Robinson Chung, Chief Professional Officer, Mr. Thomas Leung, Chief Building Surveyor from Legal Services of the Department, Ms. Lisa Zhu, Senior Building Surveyor, as well as Mr. Alan Lai, Senior Government Counsel from DFJ. And next to me, I have my legal advisor as well as secretary of the subcommittee. May I explain to you our procedures? I'll first invite deputations to speak for no more than 4 minutes each, so that we can have time for members to discuss and put questions to the deputations. Please note the timer here. By the time is 4 minutes, there will be an alert for you to remind you that time is up, and some deputations already given us written submissions. For those who haven't, you are welcome to do so after the meeting. You may submit your views to the Secretariat, and may I remind deputations and individuals that your submissions to the subcommittee are not covered by the immunities and protection under the Electoral Powers and Privileges Ordinance, and the same applies to your written submission. I believe you are going to speak in Cantonese, but I'd like to let you know that for Channel 0, it is the floor, Channel 1 Cantonese, Channel 2 English. All right, without further ado, I give the floor to deputations. The first speaker is Mr. Kwok Chun Man, Tung Community and Network Association. Thank you, Chairman. Well, I've been working since I was 16 for 31 years. I'm a frontline works contractor, I fail to see how by inspection I can judge whether a signboard is safe or not. If there is anyone in the administration that possesses this ability, please open a class and train people. Now, if by visual inspection, can you really tell that there is any imminent danger? The mandatory inspection of windows have given us a headache. I believe the industry will not be able to catch up if you include signboards as well. The minor works control system has been in place for 2.5 years, and starting from the 2nd of September, there will be the SBCS. Why does the administration want to give blanket exemption to signboards erected before the commencement date? Perhaps the administration is admitting that there is a major problem with MWCS. In recent years, there have been new unauthorized signboards, and the department cannot take enforcement action. You just take a look in the streets, and you see that for new signboards, they have not followed APP 147, the code of practice. Frankly speaking, I can't tell you whether these signboards are authorized or otherwise. For my types 1 and 2, well, most of the signboards are under these two types. However, we cannot evade AP 126, and when other provisions are contravened, then they will be tackled afterwards and removed. As a result, the public and the industry have misunderstood. They think that the Buildings Ordinance can prevail over our other statute. We agree that all minor works should be subject to regular inspection and maintenance, and it's proper for the administration to have a regulatory regime. However, if we bundle this up with mandatory inspection or exemption, well, you are just trying to silence other members of the public if you provide exemption. If the regulations are passed without any amendment, we are really disappointed. All in all, there must be more information before we decide whether the administration is condoning UBWs or admitting that it is not possible to tackle these UBWs. Now, if you do not act justly, then there will be a lot of problems, and you must be fair. Well, there's the problem of UBWs, of small houses, and also private columbaria. So I hope the administration or the legislature would not allow the administration to have this authority. Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Wang Chi-yong, Executive Officer from Hong Kong Professionals and Senior Executives Association. Thank you, Chairman. The association has the following to say in relation to the proposed regulations. First, we support the introduction of SBCS. I'm sure this will be able to reduce some of the safety issues associated with unauthorized signboards or hazards to members of the public, and also loss of property. Of course, if there are too many signboards, then heavy-duty vehicles might be affected, and also that may also impede fire rescue operations. The simplified requirements of MWCS, well, we believe that the coverage is too wide. Too many building structures are involved. Some building structures do not pose any imminent danger or safety issues. So the administration should review the effectiveness of the MWCS so as to reduce its negative impacts, so as to strike a balance between safety and owners' interests. The administration should consider discussing with relevant professional associations and contractors on the installation, inspection, maintenance, and removal of signboards and the related codes of practice. And there should be proper guidelines for installation and maintenance of signboards. Regarding the 5-year safety inspection period, well, it is exactly the same for other minor works. However, signboards differ in terms of dimension and types. For smaller unauthorized signboards, they do not pose any imminent danger or safety issues. We believe that the provisions should be adjusted so that smaller unauthorized signboards should be exempted from regulation. We believe that the SEBCS will help to eliminate some of the safety issues of signboards. However, we want the administration to strike a proper balance between safety and also owner's interest so as to minimize the inconvenience on shop operators. Thank you. Mr. Wong Sing Lam, President of Contractors Authorised Signatory Association. Thank you, Chairman. Our association supports the SBCS because in Hong Kong there are 190,000 unauthorized signboards hanging on the facades of buildings. They haven't been certified or approved before erection. As we all know, UBWs have a long history in Hong Kong. If you want to remove all of them, I don't think you can cope in terms of manpower and other aspects. With the SPCS, we are already bringing them under regulation because offshore signboards is a category under the MWCS. Well, it's just because that the signboards were erected long before the establishment of the system and they had not been certified and therefore they have become unauthorized. So the only concern is safety. About 2 years ago, signboard is a category under the MWCS anyway. However, some signboards were not inspected by the buildings department, so they were not given a code or serial number, and yet they are allowed to exist in the business world of Hong Kong. So we have a few questions to ask. First, about enforcement. These signboards are on the facades of buildings. I'd like to know whether owners and corporations' approval or approval from relevant parties is required. Do we need such information in order that such signboards can continue to be there? And in between signboards, there should be a distance of 2.4 meters. If two contractors are checking the same signboards, and if the distance is less than 2.4 meters, then how can the buildings department decide which signboard was there first? Because perhaps the application was were submitted at the same time. So who is to determine which was the first signboard erected there? And regarding operation, there must be clear indication of the structure of the signboard. As mentioned by one gentleman just now, using a visual inspection may not be able to tell you the structure of the signboard. Perhaps some tests, for instance, screw-out test might be needed. Perhaps that would be a more appropriate way of inspection. Thank you. Thank you. Next. Mr. Wong Wing-hwa, Chairman of the Registered Minor Works Contractor Signatory Association. Thank you. I'm a government authorized signatory, and I have been in this industry for 4 decades. We have 1,600 members. Most of them are incorporated contractors, and they are, in fact, the minor contractors. Well, the MWCS has been in place for 2.5 years. Although minor works are minor in scale, but a lot of items are covered, and the industry is still getting accustomed to the system. In general, we support the system. However, I'd like to ask the administration a question. For Type 1 signboard under MWCS, the removal can be done by a Type 2 contractor. For new signboards, now if they fall under Type 1, then an AP or RLC signatures are required. We hope that for Type 1 signboards, if validation reports are sought by the Buildings Department, we want Type 2 contractors to be eligible to do the job. Because inspection and strengthening can be done by Type 2 contractors, then people can spare the expenses to hire an AP or RSE, and that could run to $40,000 to $60,000.
Past experience shows us that the professionals are not really interested in taking up this kind of work because the works are small in scale, but the responsibilities are potentially big. And it will become a burden. And we would submit that the government carefully considers this scheme. Thank you. Hong Kong General Building Contractors Association, Mr. Teddy To, Vice President. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have been in the buildings industry for over 30 years. Now, in the construction sites in the recent period of time, the developer would construct the frame for signboards at the point of construction of the building. And this is to facilitate convenient and legal installation of signboards for occupants of the building in the future. As you know, in the Tsim Sha Tsui, Nathan Road area, there are all sorts of signboards hung outside of the building. Sometimes these signboards were hung by a single wire, very precarious. So I think control is necessary because we must not wait till there are dangers and incidences and where there are injuries before we act. Now, it had been a very tedious route from no control to control, and the industry had participated in that process. And we need the legislation to provide comprehensive handling of signboards. Some signboards, as far as I can see, are huge. Some are constructed with canvas materials, zinc, sheets, etc. And the width is stupendous. And if they should be covered by another signpost in front of them, they simply extend the signboard again, making it even larger. So we do need control. Hopefully, in terms of size, width, height, and the intensity of light, I hope these can be controlled. Now, recently I've had meetings with the environmental groups, and there was an officer who showed us a photo, and he asked a picture of the a luminous signboard, and it was actually 5 a.m. in the morning when the signboard was actually in full blaze and disturbing the residents in the building. Definitely detrimental to the tenants of the building and actually for anybody in the vicinity, and it is just not right. So I'm in support of the legislative effort. Thank you very much, deputations. I would now like to invite the administration to respond to the deputations, and after that we will have a question session from the members. Mr. Chang. We thank the deputations for coming up to this meeting and providing us with such valuable input, especially the Hong Kong professionals and senior executives, Contractors Authorised, Signatory Association, Registered Minor Works Contractor Signatory Association, and the Hong Kong General Building Contractors Association for their support. But there are certain opinions where they are really input as to how we can perhaps improve on the proposal. And also from the Tung Community Network Association, Mr. Wai-kwok had also spoken, and we have heard him. Now, in fact, the import of the amendment, let me think. Mr. Wong Sing Lam of the Contractors Authorised Signatory Association had a very good point he made just now. We have some 190,000 signboards existing. How can we allow them to continue to exist in a safe manner? Many of them are, of course, unauthorized, and of course the best way forward probably is to dismantle them all. But this is not feasible because of the sheer number of these signboards. And also, a number of commercial concerns are really still using the signboards, and there is therefore economic and commercial value there. And also the resources and the time would be stupendous for dismantling all these signboards. So perhaps a more feasible way is to come up with this particular proposal, and that is with validation cycles, etc. Well, the 190,000 unauthorized signboards was an early estimate. Actually, it may well be over 200,000 last count. So we want to be practicable in our approach to tackle this huge number of unauthorized signboards, and we prioritize safety. With all these signboards, given that we cannot handle them all in one go in a very short period of time, we would have to prioritize safety. And therefore, we have come up with this proposed system. And also for this system, it is really to handle the existing authorized signboards. As for new signboards, you probably are familiar with this. In the past, until 2010, when the MWCS came into operation, there were two types of signboards. If they abide by the conditions of the MWCS, then there can be minor works type of construction for the signboards. But if they should be bigger in size outside of the MWCS conditions, then they will have to be submitted, the plan and design, and authorized duly before there can be construction of these signboards. So that is to say, we are prioritizing safety. Now, Mr. Kwok of Tung Community said that there is a blanket exemption and one-time exemption for all unauthorized signboards. That is not true. These signboards remain unauthorized signboards, but we have considered the reality of things. One, the sheer number of the signboards, and secondly, the economic value of these signboards, and therefore we have come up with this proposed system. This is not a one-off blanket exemption or immunity. Now, Mr. Wong talked about the efficacy of the MWCS. A lot of works are now coming under the MWCS. And it was at the end of 2010 that the MWCS came into operation. And there are many opinions over that. Some urge us to include more items under MWCS to make it more extensive so that more minor works can come under this more streamlined and simplified procedure. And Mr. Wong just now mentioned that perhaps there are many items under MWCS, and definitely the Buildings Department will be reviewing from time to time as to what kind of works and items should come under MWCS, and we welcome industry's input there. And Mr. Wong also talked about the 5-year validation cycle. Well, at the previous meeting of this panel, we have had members asking the same question. And Mr. Wong, as Mr. Wong pointed out just now, for the smaller signboards, perhaps we can exempt them from the 5-year validation. But at the same time, we have also heard views that this 5-year cycle is too long, that it should be perhaps 2 or 3 years. The reason why we came up with 5 years as a cycle is because there are risks, dangers with regard to these unauthorized signboards. So we have to strike a balance. One, safety. And secondly, for commercial concerns using the signboards, how we actually impact them. So we have to balance these two considerations, and that's why we came up with a 5-year safety validation cycle. And the Contractors Authorised Signatory Association, Mr. Wong Sing Lam, talked about enforcement. First of all, I welcome your support for the proposal. And he talked about the consent of the owners' associations of buildings. Perhaps the signboards are not put out by the owners' association, but by other people. What then? Now, in the Buildings Ordinance, we do not extend the power over the owners, but rather it should come under Cap 334, rather, of the Buildings Ordinance. And in conducting validation, we will be contacting the owners as well, the owners association, so there should be due communication with these entities. And Mr. Wong Sing Lam had mentioned just now that if there were two signboards which both qualify under the validation, but the 2.4 meters distance between the two, which one will take precedence? That was a question. Well, in our system, we will be handling or processing the earlier submitted signboard first. And that is to say, the earlier the application was made for the validation, the signboard will take precedence as far as processing of the Buildings Department goes. And I believe that this is a fair and reasonable way forward. And Mr. Wong Wing-Wah of Registered Minor Works Contractors Signatory Association talked about Type 2 minor works contractors. Perhaps I will ask the Buildings Department my colleagues there to respond to this question. Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I can respond to Mr. Wang Wing-wa's question as to who can take up Type 1 and 2 works. The point was made just now that Type 1 works can be taken up by Type 2 contractors or registered contractors. Now, there are two types of work here. One is construction, two, dismantling of signboards. And now we are talking about validation of the signboards as well. Well, we would want to have the commensurate type of contractors being responsible for this work. For example, Type 1 would pertain to more sensitive location and a bigger size for the signboard, and therefore we would want the commensurate registered contractors to be responsible for this type of work. That is Type 1 contractors. But for without data, we know that Type 2 signboards are most prevalent. Type 1 the least, and Type 3 in between. So that would not affect the Type 2, Type 3 contractors and the amount of work that they potentially would get. And Mr. Wong Sing Lam of the Authorised Signatory Association and Mr. Kwok had also talked about whether it is inspection by site and by site only. If I can ask my colleague to talk about other methods of inspection. Mr. Zhong? Mr. Robinson Chung. That is right. For inspection, we will have codes of practice for reference by the industry, and we will propose reports to explain to the industry, the trade, first of all, the structure of the signboard, the material used, the size, and also the structure of the attachment to the exterior wall of buildings. We are not really thinking that inspection by site is sufficient. Now, as mentioned just now, for Type 1 signboards, they are larger in size, and it is quite impossible to conduct this kind of procedure only. Now, as for situations where the signboards are what type of anchor boosts are used for the signboards concerned, we can actually conduct a number of procedures. For example, we can do some solid consolidation process to make it safer.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. To from the Hong Kong General Chamber of Contractors Association supports us. We're grateful for that. And he referred to light pollution posed by signboards. We understand that, but it is not within the scope of the Buildings Ordinance, and we believe the EPD has got relevant measures to tackle that. I'd like to stress in particular that the SBCS will not replace enforcement by the Buildings Department. The department will continue to take enforcement action. The system will only deal with the existing 120,000 odd unauthorized signboards. So we have a multi-pronged approach to deal with signboards in Hong Kong. Thank you. Now I open the floor to members to ask questions. Anyone? Yes, who should go first? Mr. Wu Chi-wai. Thank you, Chairman. First, I'd like to thank the deputations and representatives of the industry to give us their views on the regulations. I hope that the Deputy Secretary can clarify this point. It was mentioned by speakers such as Mr. Kwok that this is like really an immunity scheme for the signboards. For those erected or installed before the 1st of September this year, they can be exempted. If I do not notify the buildings department, then will you go and check the signboards? In other words, if I do not notify the buildings department, I don't bear any risk. So the signboards can be there forever until they are dangerous and spotted by the department, and then the department will issue a removal order. I'd like to know whether that will be the consequence of the new regime. And secondly, I think the contention point or the most controversial signboards are not those on the shop front, rather projecting signboards. They usually involve structural problems as well as pollution, light pollution. But under the system, the government is not going to tackle anything related to the ownership. The contractor will have to inform the owners incorporation. What if approval is not given by the OC? This is a big thing for the contractor, because the contractor will be mainly responsible, because the OC, of course, will not allow the contractor to build a signboard because you are encroaching on our property. And then the contractor will claim that approval has been given by the buildings department already. So this notification system has not addressed the operational difficulties associated with the installation of signboards. And thirdly, from what I observe, most signboards, after they are placed there, will only involve the replacement of the plastic sheet or acrylic sheet without removing the structure. So will that be regarded as a new signboard? There is no change to the structure, and there's just a replacement of the front sheet, and as a result, the signboard may not be bound by the SBCS. That being the case, the signboard has commercial value. Once the structure is placed there, then I can charge the next door owner, if he is, to replace the main display sheet with another. And after the SBCS takes effect, what is the relationship between this system and unauthorized signboards? Come the 2nd of September, I still want to install a signboard without seeking your approval first. I want to save the trouble of seeking approval. And what will be the penalty, and what will be the management approach by the administration? Thank you, Mr. Wu, for your 4 questions. What if the structure remains the same and the sign is changed? Does that mean that it is a new signboard? I will defer to my colleagues later. I think the first and the 4th questions are related. If there is no notification, what will be the penalty? The objective of SBCS is as follows. We have 120,000 unauthorized signboards in existence. Our approach is to ensure that they are safe within the shortest period of time. yes, enforcement is needed, but because of the sheer quantity in existence and also the resources available, it's not possible to phase them out overnight. And some of the signboards are still in use, so they have a commercial value. I think, according to a consultancy, most of the signboards do not pose any imminent danger and they can still be used. The notification system is a pragmatic way of dealing with existing signboards. What will be the consequence if owners do not notify us? As said previously, the Buildings Department will take enforcement action. Mr. Wu is very correct in saying that if there is no notification, if they are not caught by the department, does that mean that they are safe or they will not run into trouble? Yes, to a certain extent, this is true. That means we're not aware of its existence if it is not notified to us. But for some signboards, usually they do not have major problems. Some strengthening will be sufficient, for instance, or the cost involved will not be too high. However, if a signboard is not notified to us and if it is caught by our enforcement action, it is no longer eligible under the SBCS and it has to be removed at once. So paying a small cost to strengthen an existing signboard and paying a penalty for breaching the regulation makes a world of difference. And what about unauthorized signboards installed after the commencement of the regulation? It will be the same scenario as no notification, because we have to deal with the 120,000 odd unauthorized signboard. After the 1st of December 2010, we already have MWCS to regulate a certain type of signboards. We hope that for signboards above that dimension, building plans can be submitted prior to installation. For signboards of a certain size, they should follow the simplified arrangements under MWCS. So once SBCS comes into effect on the 2nd of September, all signboards can be subject to the notification system, and if they don't, then they will be subject to enforcement by the Buildings Department. This is our concept. And Mr. Wu asked a more complicated issue. If a signboard is installed on the exterior wall of a building without the consent of the owners incorporation or the owner, then what we intend to deal with is existing signboards. They're already there. For new signboards, of course, the same situation may arise. Because installation of signboards on the exterior wall will involve ownership and management of the building, and that can be tackled under the Buildings Ordinance. The owners or the owners incorporation can seek civil claims. Whether it is a new signboard or is under the SBCS, we will ensure that the owner or the OC is aware of that matter. I will defer to the Buildings Department to answer the question about the third question. Right, the old structure but with a new sign. Does that mean that it is a new signboard? Well, Mr. Wu referred to replacement of the display sheet. Under the MWCS, we have a system to allow that to happen. And after replacement, we will provide a serial number. If it is an authorized signboard, then under the simplified procedures of MWCS, now we hope that if the display is black in a white background, or rather, the label we provide, the sticker we provide, is in black print in white background. And why do we have to seek such information? Because under the SPCS, we want to keep information of all unauthorized signboards in our database so that we have more data when the system is up for review in 2 years' time. And we need more information of these signboards before we review our policy. You want to follow up, or please do so in the second round. Mr. Chang Hen Pen, to be followed by Mr. Gary Chen. Mr. Chang Pen. Thank you, Chairman. So we've heard the views of deputations this morning. Our greatest concern is still the problem of ownership. But we see no desire on the part of the administration to address this. In my constituency, there was this recent incident. Minor works contractor installed a frame for air conditioner on the external wall, and then the owner took him to task. The minor works contractor told the owner that, well, we've already notified the buildings department, so we can do it now. The two almost ended up in a fight, because this system will lead to confrontations between shop owners or shop operators and minor contractors, and also the OCs and owners. Mr. Zhang said that this is something about building management, but we are talking about the safety as well as the liability and also the wish of owners. So shouldn't the administration think about this so that there won't be a problem when it comes to operation? Because if a minor works contractor has already received an order to do the work, he has to do it, otherwise he will be in breach of contract and might be sued. And if he continues to do so, he may have to argue with the owner.
I'd like to know about the definition of new signboards. I was not very clear just now. You mentioned there'll be... Yes, you talked about the yellow or the white wording against a black background to signify. I would like to know, how do you differentiate the signboards? Is it the content? Is it the how? Can you just explain further, Mr. Chung? And also, concerning the Type 1 contractors being able to be responsible for certain types of signboards, I would think that this may be twisting or altering the existing mode of operation, especially for contractors who rely on this kind of work for their livelihood. But if you're asking that only Type 1 or registered professionals be the only persons that can take up this kind of work, are we actually impacting negatively the livelihood of Type 2 or lower contractors? Now, the third point is that there had been a lot of new policies and new systems and control systems from your department. And what I'm worried about is that you're snowed under. And I fear that if there should be contractors trying to call and call your hotline, but to no avail, what then? All right. We have a written submission from the administration in response to some questions or similar questions we have raised in the last meeting. Yes. Now, if I can just respond to the first question, and I'll leave the three technical questions to my colleagues. In fact, the first question was really also Mr. Wu's question just now. Now, if I can just supplement, this issue is really not the main import of this amendment ordinance. We are really trying to deal with unauthorized signboards only here. And these signboards are already in existence. Perhaps a bigger question is, what about new signboards and the ownership of such signboards? And it may actually be more controversial there. That is a bigger issue, and this is not something that can be single-handedly solved by the Bldgs ordinance. Perhaps we will have to approach it from another angle in another venue. Another point to supplement, Mr. Wu voiced a concern that if it is not the owners who came up with the notification or application, but nevertheless, a structure, a signboard had been erected outside of the building or on the exterior wall of the building, then what then? Now, actually, for the Bldgs department, for the authorization of the design or structure of the signboards, it would not signify any ownership or make exemption to. Well, actually, it does not mean that there is ownership of the said structure, even if there should be an authorization by the Bldgs department. And also, the owners of the building are obliged by law to see to it that there is well management of the building. And the deed of the buildings and execution of the deed and the signatory of the deed does not involve the government. So it would be difficult for the government to participate in that process because it is not a party to the mutual deed. So the owners will have to refer to the deeds and to see that whether there is violation of their ownership, should there be any such structures to be installed on the exterior walls of the building. So concerning OC consent, we can follow up with that. But I would like to reiterate, as I have mentioned earlier, this particular subsidiary legislation deals only with unauthorized signboards. And the kind of ownership issues that you mentioned are really a bigger issue, and perhaps it is not to be dealt with here. My colleagues will answer the rest of the questions. Well, before you do, concerning the notification of the owners, according to this control system, who is responsible for so doing? Would the Bldgs authority do so on being notified? Will you notify the owners, or would the contractors do that? Yes, my colleague will talk about the operation or the procedure. Well, for this control system, the owner of the signboard will have to provide his information, and also whether there are OCs involved or contractors. Hopefully there will be communication with the OC of the owner. And if we confirm after the submission of the design, etc., that it is safe, we will notify the applicant, and we will also copy the OC so that they know that the Bldgs department had vetted the proposed signboard to be put up at the building. Now, whether signboards are legal or not legal, well, there are three types of legal signboards. First of all, for signboards that are bigger than minor works control system signboards, and they are duly authorized. And secondly, the three types according to size of minor works signboards. And there are others which are very small signboards which are less than 50 millimeters. Very small ones, and these are exempted from applications. Apart from these three types of signboards, all others are unauthorized signboards. And as mentioned just now, we will not be dismantling these unauthorized signboards, but it still remains true that they are unauthorized because they are not under any of the three types of signboards as mentioned just now. Now, as for the yellow and white wording against the black background, from time to time, these advertisements on the signboards will be changed. Now, if the display panel is to be taken down and changed, it comes under minor works control system. And as mentioned, there will be a black wording against a white background if we authorize that. Now, otherwise, there would be a situation where there will have to be application under the minor works control scheme, and we will give them a code, and that would actually be revealed in a yellow wording against a black background. All right. You are saying that it actually the yellow word, the black background or whatever color wording actually appears on the panel? Yes, it appears on the panel itself. As for type 1 contractors, actually Mr. Hui had already pointed it out. For type 2 and type 3 signboards, they actually account for over 90% of unauthorized signboards. And for type 1 signboards, we will require higher ranking contractors to take up that kind of work because the structure is more complicated and they're bigger in size, so even the professionals would not be able to conduct site inspection, and there will have to be more involved work there. Yes. If you can just respond on the whether you have the resources to cope with all this work. Well, I thank you for the concern concerning our manpower at the Buildings Department. Yes, indeed, we are quite stretched because of recent measures and policies, and we would want to look for more resources, manpower, but before we can attain that, we will have to deploy our staff rationally. We have to prioritize on emergency or urgency of the works. We will continue to do so. Now, our control department and buildings department, there are over 500 qualified staff who will take up the buildings control work. And then there is a signboard control unit with 19 professional and technical level staff, and they will be focusing on signboards. Now, Mr. Chan talked about whether this would affect type 2 or other types of contractors and their livelihood. Well, in fact, it would not affect the minor works contractors' work. It would not adversely affect their opportunity for taking up such work. For the type 1 to 3 works, Type 2 and Type 3 works together account for over 90% of all works. And in the validation system, again, we are categorizing the works according to the size of the signboards. Now, if these are Type 2 and Type 3 contractors, they will be responsible, they can be responsible for Type 2 and Type 3 signboards. Yes. We will, the members, first round of questioning, you will notice that we are allowing quite a lot of time for questioning because we do not have a lot of members present, and also because these issues are of major concern. Now, going to the older areas of Hong Kong, many of the signboards are, we do not know the owners, it's no rentals are collected, and there are no OCs. If you look at 24(2)(c), if we cannot find the owners, then whoever is receiving the rentals will be contacted or resorted to. Now, for the signboards, without these parties concerned, who do you follow up with? Whom does the building department contact? Should these signboards be problematic? After years of wear and tear, if they become dangerous, whom do you contact? This is a very important issue. Would the government actually maintain the signboard or dismantle the signboard? I would like some clarifications there. A second question. Apart from safety issues, we would notice that for some of the abandoned signboards in the older areas, in fact, it really adversely affects the outlook of the neighborhood, of the area. On Nathan Road, for instance, there used to be a very big electric appliance shop there, which has completely closed business. But on the other hand, the signboard's still there, faded and in bad condition. And it really affects the outlook of the area. Restaurants, similarly, leave the signboards behind, even though the restaurants have closed. So if we're saying that signboards do contribute to the economic value of Hong Kong, well, that is true. But on the other hand, what about these abandoned signboards that are in bad shape? How do we follow up with these?
Will the administration take some action against such signboards? Two questions. All right, Deputy Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. I thank Mr. Gary Chen for his two questions. I will answer the general first, and my colleagues can supplement on how we take enforcement action. The Buildings Department has ongoing operation to deal with abandoned signboards. To give you some statistics, in the 6 years between 2006 and 2011, under the Public Health and Municipal Services Ordinance, close to 10,900 removal orders have been issued for removal of dangerous structures, requiring the owners to remove such dangerous structures. 18,200 abandoned or dangerous signboards have been removed. Just in last year, the BD issued 268 notices for removal of dangerous structures. Over 1,300 abandoned or dangerous signboards have been removed. You may think that the statistics for last year was lower than that for the previous few years, because in 2009 and 2010, the Buildings Department had a special operation to remove such signboards. So the Buildings Department has all along taken enforcement action to tackle abandoned signboards. And Mr. Gary Chen talked about the ownership of such signboards. the Buildings Department will act under the Public Health and Municipal Services Ordinance in issuing removal notices. Now, if the owner of the building is not involved, then of course they are not involved in the removal notice. For Section 24(2)(c), we'll talk about unauthorized signboards. So we have a three-tier system. First, we will find out who is the signboard of the owner and take him, hold him liable. If we can't find the owner of the signboard, we'll find who is receiving rent or other money consideration of the signboard. Now, if he cannot be identified, then we will consider the owner of the land or premises on which the signboard has been installed. If we cannot chase any of these three parties, now if the signboard is really dangerous, the BD will remove it first. I'll see if the BD has anything to supplement. Mr. Hui. Thank you. In handling dangerous or abandoned signboards, we have a few ways to identify them. Because of manpower constraints, we cannot send our men out to patrol on a regular basis, but we have a consultancy firm to help us to identify such signboards in busy areas of town. And every year, we liaise with district councils, inviting information on the exact location of abandoned signboards from the district councils. And then we can take action. It's true that Hong Kong is a very busy commercial area and shops may open and close and signboards become abandoned after a couple of years. Faced with this problem, we will gradually step up our action, but that is subject to manpower constraints. As the Secretary said, in the past 5 to 6 years, we've removed quite a lot of signboards, up to 18,000 odd signboards. So for signboards that require immediate action, they've been dealt with. Mr. Gary Chan said that in different districts there are still large abandoned signboards spotted. Please pass on to us information after the meeting for us to follow up. Mr. Gary Chen asked, in addition to safety, would you consider the visual impact? So will you consider this factor when you take action? Whether signboards are an eyesore, well, I think it is hard to decide whether a signboard is ugly or otherwise. So our main consideration is still safety. If a signboard is obviously abandoned, well, that will be taken into account. A short follow-up. Well, according to the department, in between 2006 and 2011, 10,000 odd signboards were removed, and then last year 1,300 were removed. Were you able to recover the cost of removal? If you could not, then it's another major issue, and I'll follow up on another occasion. Under Cap 123 Public Health and Municipal Services Ordinance, we have the responsibility and power to remove dangerous and abandoned signboards. If it is already abandoned and the owner cannot be traced, of course, we cannot recover the cost. A contractor of the BD will remove the abandoned signboard on behalf of the previous owner. So public money is involved. You cannot trace the owner. I'd like to know whether that 1,300 and 18,000 removed, is it true that you could not recover the cost? Well, there are several steps. First, we have to issue a removal notice. We might think that a signboard is abandoned, but if in fact he has an owner, he may respond to our notice and remove it. So offhand, I don't have any information as to how many of the 18,000 and 1,300 signboards removed were done by the government. Well, when you enact the subsidy legislation, will you try to plug the loophole because people will continue to install signboards, and there is no OC here and there is no one for them to pay rent, and they just erect the signboard first, and after they have ceased business, they will leave the signboard there. And ultimately, the government will have to foot the bill in removing the abandoned signboard. Is there anything in the subsidiary legislation to deal with this problem? Thank you. In the SBCS, will require information of the owner of the signboard to be included, and also persons responsible for the installation work. If in the future the signboard is abandoned, we have information to claim the owner of the signboard. So it's different from what it is now. We don't know who the owners are and the users are, so the future scenario will be very different from the existing situation. So the SBCS is intended to build up a database so that the situation referred to by Mr. Gary Chen can be tackled. When there is information on the owner, then there is a higher chance of recovering costs from the owner for removing the signboard. Mr. Chen. As the department said, there are close to 120,000 unauthorized signboards, many of which are affecting the daily lives of residents. For instance, signboards installed just next to their units, and some that have taken up common parts of the building under the management of the OC. In the past, there was no regulation whatsoever. As a result, OCs and owners are faced with this difficulty. Of course, it is good to have the SBCS to enhance control. But the Deputy Secretary told us that the Buildings Department would not handle ownership issues. Noted, I know. But can the administration take a step further? Because many OCs and flat owners have complained about this issue. While you will not tackle ownership issues, now if you are going to take enforcement action and prosecute unauthorized signboards, can you, as a matter of priority, deal with signboards that are subjects of complaints by OCs and owners first? Because I've said this to the BD. If some UBWs are subjects of complaint by OCs, can they be given higher priority? And the answer is no. But some buildings would like to carry out a major maintenance and repair works, and if the signboards are removed first, it would facilitate their maintenance. And I think the Buildings Department is reluctant to accord priority to such signboards. I know that the administration wants the OC to take civil action. Yes, I understand, but from owners and OC's point of view, since they are unauthorized structures, the government will take enforcement action. I should save litigation costs and wait for the government to take action so that it will be a win-win situation. So why can't the administration consider this issue from this perspective? Can you think out of your box and tackle such UBWs or signboards more effectively and efficiently? And the inspection period is 5 years. This is very clear. But will it follow the system of mandatory inspection of windows and buildings? That is, there must be an inspection once every 5 years. In fact, under the ordinance, the owner of the signboard must submit a new validation report or remove the signboard in no less than 5 years after the first inspection. Now, if in the first 5 years after the inspection, the whole thing should be settled, there should be not a second 5-year period. Is my understanding correct? Thank you, Mr. Kwok, for your 2 questions. I will answer the second question first. The safety validation should be done once every 5 years, assuming that it is done in September this year. The signboard may be subject to wear and tear after some time of after it's been used for some time. Some bolts may come loose, so we expect or we require an inspection once every 5 years to ensure its safety. All right, does that mean that now if they only intends to use it continue to use a signboard, and if a validation is done in the first 5-year cycle, then it is no longer unauthorized? No, it will not make it authorized. It's just that it will not be subject to the enforcement action of the Buildings Department if it is satisfied the requirements of SBCS. It is still unauthorized. It's just that because with so many unauthorized signboards, we have a pragmatic approach to deal with such things. It's just the same as the situation facing drying racks in 2010. Mr. Kwok asked the Buildings Department to accord priority to signboards that have been subjects of complaint by OCs. I'll ask Mr. Hui to answer. Thank you. Whether we're talking about unauthorized signboards or other building structures, we have a large quantity in Hong Kong. We accord priority to the safety of such structures. For UBWs or unauthorized signboards with obvious danger, we will tackle them first. For ordinary UBWs, we have to follow our priorities under our enforcement policy. So, if we are asked to single out UBWs that have been subject of complaint by OCs that may lead to some confusion in enforcement.
But there are actually many instances where we have done some coordination and actually compromise because of complaints and communications from OCs. Now, for instance, for the unauthorized building works, and after we have given out the removal order, there can be an appeal opportunity. And at the end of the day, in fact, the unauthorized building works may not actually be removed, and the building itself, in terms of its maintenance work, in terms of its exit and entrance, etc., may be adversely affected. We have noticed that in certain neighborhoods in particular, and therefore we have we have taken an approach of prioritizing. Yes, I understand that the Buildings Department will have to prioritize and handle the dangerous structures first. I understand that. But can you then prioritize the complaints of the OCs? I know you're going from district to district. But for districts that you have not focused on yet, you would respond to them even though there may be complaints. You do not come up with a clear response that they are occupying a second position in the priority list, and that is right after the dangerous items or building works. So for these unauthorized building works, I would want the department to take that one step forward and deal with these OC's complaints after the first priority of dangerous building works. Mr. Wu? Yes. Existing signboards will, of course, have to be controlled, as mentioned. As for new signboards, we have been saying that for new signboards, you do not require them to obtain the consent of the owner of the building for the erection of these signboards. You only consider the safety issue. Now, you really have to reconsider this. In the past, because there was a lack of regulation, you allowed signboards to be constructed. And now you are rectifying these signboards, but they are still unauthorized signboards. But for newly sanctioned or authorized signboards, if you allow them, even though they are not authorized, can you please get legal opinion whether you can actually sign off on these signboards which are unauthorized and allow them to continue to exist or allow them to be constructed for these new signboards? I think you have to really think through this, whether this is admissible legally. A second point I would like the administration to consider. In dealing with unauthorized building works, we basically segregate them into various categories. In the 70s and the 1980s, there were these flower racks. And at the time, it was very clear that these hanging structures were disallowed and they had to be removed. And it was very clear for especially new buildings. Otherwise, the message you send out is very confusing. And that is exterior hanging structures, including signboards, are more dangerous and potentially more risky, definitely riskier than signboards on the top of a shop on the wall. So there are these two types of handling for these two different types of signboards. Now, the next question is really an administrative one. My second question, but the first question was really a legalistic one. The government is sending a message, a very bad message to society, in saying that you are allowing signboards which are unauthorized and you're allowing them to be put up and to be in existence. Yes, that's very clear. Actually, a few members have raised the same issue, and that is the Buildings Department is focusing on the structure of the signboards and the safety of the signboards, whether this is in keeping with the requirements of minor works, etc. But there are issues such as ownership, which actually Mr. Hui had already responded to. And he has also discussed the issue of different levels of risks as well. Yes, I thank Mr. Wu for the concern. In fact, we have discussed this concern for a number of times, and as the chairman had mentioned, we focus on the safety of the proposed signboard. If there is a proposal of a signboard that complies with the requirements that we set out for the structure then we will have to approve the design and the plan for the structure. But as for other areas, such as, for instance, the police will be looking at whether the signs advertisement is an obscene one, etc. So there are other angles which are really above and beyond what we have in front of us here in terms of the amendment ordinance. For risks of signboards under MWCS, it is exactly the categorization of the signboards according to the size, etc. For example, for cantilever signboards type 1, it can be as large as 10 meters square to 20 meters square, and type 2 would be under 10 meters square, and category 3 would be 1 meter square for the display area. So by pointing this out, we are saying that we are not dealing with all minor works the same, but rather we're looking at the structure of the signboard, the size of the signboard, in determining what type it comes under, and therefore what type of contractors would be able to deal with or handle these signboards. Yes, the deputations, I am sure you would want the administration to make certain responses. And if you have new opinions, and we have done that just now, and if you have new points to make, you are welcome to write in as well. Any new questions you would like to raise here? Mr. Kwok, yes? Assuming that the proposed scheme is approved by the LegCo, would you first notify the OCs, or would you first conduct the validation first? In fact, the gentleman just now was very unclear. From my point of view, you must not adversely affect the neighbors or the residents' rights. That is the priority from my point of view. Now, secondly, for the 5-year cycle, within 5 years, all these signboards, unauthorized signboards, will be validated. Now, I would like to know whether that is correct, and the rest of it would be illegal signboards. This is not a time for you to make follow-up questions, but in any case, we can ask the Secretary to respond. I too have a question, because we didn't really have sufficient time for questioning just now. I would like to know from the administration, for this scheme, when it is introduced, do you have relevant policies for the streets and districts that will be announced, so that the trade would be able to find that information? Perhaps you can make it available on the website, what districts you are prioritizing in introducing this scheme. Now, if I can just respond to Mr. Kwok's second question first, concerning the 5-year cycle. Yes, in principle, you are correct. After the validation, if it is found that the requirements are complied with, the signboard can continue to exist, and the remainder would be either authorized, or for those unauthorized and which do not comply with the validation requirements, these would be unauthorized signboards, and they will come under certain controls. Now, as for the second question, if I can ask Mr. Chung to answer that. Yes, to respond to Mr. Kwok just now. Yes, when we receive the notification, we will contact the OC, because if it is an unsuccessful application for validation, at the end of the day we find it to be an unsuccessful one, we will not need to contact the OC. And in response to Mr. Wong's question, for the buildings and districts we focus on, first of all, in stage 1 of phase 1, we will be focusing on 2,000 buildings which have been identified by our buildings surveillance colleagues. As for individual streets and districts, we will consider the publication of these districts and streets. We can consider that in the future. Now, if this scheme is to be approved in September, then in Hong Kong, for all those signboards which are unauthorized, the owner of these unauthorized signboards can participate on their voluntary basis. That for one. And secondly, the buildings department in certain buildings and districts, we will be making publicity efforts and will be encouraging the participation. So in fact, this is not limited to certain buildings, the introduction of the scheme, but rather it is open to all owners of such signboards across the territory. Yes. Thank you very much, and I provided certain leniency for further questioning of the deputations, and for the issues of concern and the responses, if you can just provide a written submission from the administration, that would be appreciated. And we thank the deputations for providing very pertinent and valuable opinions, and the administration had also duly responded to them. And one more time, I would like to thank you for taking your valuable time in coming to this session and sharing your valuable opinions. Yes, if you can just vacate the room, we will continue with the meeting thereafter.
Hello. 冇錯，好啦，得返兩個人好。咁我哋繼續返。
Let us continue. First, the administration has prepared a response to issues raised at our last meeting in paper CB 21390/1213(1). Right, can the administration briefly walk us through the paper before members ask questions? Thank you, Chairman. At our last meeting dated the 7th of June 2013, members asked some issues, and let me briefly reply. First, the interval of validation period. Some members asked why 5 years. We believe 5 years is a proper balance. On the one hand, we have to consider the possible safety implications of the signboard, and on the other hand, we don't want to bring undue inconvenience to business operators. So we believe that 5 years is about right. But that doesn't mean that during the 5-year period, we will turn a blind eye to complaints or danger posed by the signboard. If it is found to be dangerous upon inspection by our staff, enforcement action will still be taken. And the second issue is information to be submitted for validation. As pointed out in our reply, the BD will provide guidance to the industry to tell them different types of information required for different types of signboards. And notification form for validation. Some members asked whether information on insurance coverage had to be included. Well, as I say, the SCBS intends to regulate the safety of signboards. Insurance coverage is not something within our regulation, so however, we agree with to a suggestion by members. We should add a footnote to remind the applicant to be mindful of the need to take out insurance or the possible liability. And then the manpower resources, well, there are above 530 professional and technical staff in two existing buildings division and mandatory building inspection division, as well as 19 professional and technical staff in the signboard control unit of the BD. Of course, they're not just tasked to look at signboards, but that is one of their main duties. In our discussion with deputations, including questions by members, there were issues such as the inspection cycle and also information required for validation, and also the role of OCs and manpower resources of the BD. All right. First, I'd like to ask a question about validation. In principle, your reply here is very similar to the oral response you gave at the last meeting. You said that the details should be more appropriately placed in the guideline, and the regulation will show the physical, will require the submission of photos and description showing the physical condition of the signboard. And whereas the actual description, you said that it will be given, the requirements will be given in the guideline. Can we be shown the guidelines at the next meeting? Because I'm sure you've already prepared the guideline. So we would like to know what is given in the guideline in relation to description. I think for similar legislation, there are two approaches. For some, the detailed requirements are put in the regulation, and for others, you put the detailed requirement in the guideline. So we've seen both approaches, but to let members understand whether your approach is appropriate or not, I think it will help if you show us a copy of your guideline. No problem, we can certainly do so. Mr. Wu? I'd like to seek information on the following two areas. First, the MWCS came into place in late 2010, and signboards is a category under MWCS. I'd like to have information on the number of signboards and their dimensions submitted to you under different types after the commencement of the system. And secondly, many deputations, including myself, are very concerned about the ownership issue and also approval by OCs. According to the Deputy Secretary, there is nothing the BD can do. Once a proposal is structurally in order, it has to approve it. Is it really the case? According to my understanding, if I like to build an authorized structure on my rooftop, if I want to seek approval, then it's not just the safety or structural safety that is in question. I must seek approval from the owners first. So please clarify, is it true that the buildings department really doesn't care about who is the owner, and that a structure can be approved just on safety consideration? And secondly, In your general survey, do you have information on the number of overhanging signboards in Hong Kong, the relative size, and how many of those are just on the shop front? I'd just like to have an overall idea, because I think the public are most concerned about signboards that are overhanging or projecting. For wall signboards or signboards on the shop front, members of the public do not mind as much. And once the system is in place, is it true that for each signboard there will be a license with the wording in black against a white background fixed to the signboard to ensure that it is licensed? If yes, what will be the actual operation? Will it make the signboard rather ugly? Please tell us the details. And of course, the technical aspects, according to the administration, will be included in the guidelines. But I want to ascertain this approval by the owners. After hearing what the BD said, I'm more worried. You have to see whether the signboard is structurally safe before you inform the relevant owner. But by that time, it's too late. If the person who affix a signboard to the external wall of a building, well, he is bound to lose in the lawsuit. We have ample case laws. So now I will not argue with you about the existing signboards, but for new signboards, you're saying that there's no need to get the consent of the owner. I know you have answered this question many times already, but I hope that you can really reconsider this issue. Thank you. Regarding the question of ownership, I know Mr. Wu is very concerned about this point. Let me briefly explain. When the BD gives its approval, indeed, it has to consider the design and safety of the signboard. That is the main consideration. If the requirements are satisfied, then the BD has to give approval. But for new signboards in particular, the BD will encourage the person who's going to install the signboard to liaise with the owner or the OC. If the signboard is done without these parties concerned, then the owner of the signboard has to bear some risks, because there might be a civil claim afterwards, or the signboard may not be able to be installed because of confrontation at the point of the installation. I suggest we provide a written reply to Mr. Wu afterwards to explain to Mr. Wu the requirements, the legal requirements of the building's ordinance. I hope I will be able to address or explain the position of the BD in that reply. Mr. Wu asked about the numbers and the size and the types of signboards installed after the MWCS comes into practice. That can certainly be done. The findings of the survey, I understand that they are still analyzing the data, but we'll see what information is available, and we'll provide a paper to address Mr. Wu's concern. And that label in black print against a white background, I don't know whether the department can take this question up. Well, it's a way to tell whether a signboard is authorized or not under our SPCS, so that when our colleagues inspect signboards in the future, they'll be able to tell whether they are authorized or not. At present, it is done under the MWCS. After the SBCS is in place, there will even have more information. The purpose is to collect more information on these signboards. We have considered alternative means, and we will review this from time to time. I beg your pardon. The reason why I ask this question is I have seen many new signboards, and I fail to see that label. Am I correct or not? The label should be affixed to the signboard, because without such labels, whatever you call it, it's difficult for your patrolling staff to tell whether these signboards have been validated or not. Yes, technically, please explain how the labels can be visible. Thank you. Under MWCS, if an owner has to replace the advertisement on the signboard for commercial reasons, perhaps the shop is changed, or he would like to display advertisements from another advertiser, then he has to inform us that the advertisement on display has been changed. We have consultants as well as staff to inspect signboards in the community. Without that label, then our enforcement staff will be informed to take action. I think what you said is correct. It is a label with some numbers. Whether the owners of signboards have strictly adhered to our guideline, currently we can't tell. But with this information available under the new system, we'll be able to tell the type of the signboard involved, and in the future we don't have to rely on labels to tell whether signboards are authorized or not. In our general survey, we have information to tell the exact number of signboards in a particular district and the number of unauthorized signboards.
Whether these are authorized or under the minor works control scheme, we will analyze the data, and we will come back with information concerning the signboards. All right, if you have no further questions to ask of the administration, we can perhaps go to the clause-by-clause vetting. But because we really do not have a lot of time till the end of the meeting today, and also we need to be provided with further information, in particular the content of the guidelines, and whether we are in agreement that this does not need to be contained in the body of the ordinance. Well, given that we do not have a lot of time till then, well, what is this bell about? Not a dismissal bell, is it? Now, in the previous meeting, we have agreed that we extend the consultation period to the 17th of July, rather the discussion period to 17th. And to the 10th of July, the notice of amendment. Now, for the next meeting, 27th of June, 8:30 a.m. 27th. Mr. Hui. Yes, I see that there is a little bit of time to the meeting. I would like to supplement on the point made by Mr. Wu concerning the print and the code on the advertisement. Now, in the code of conduct or guideline that we have, there is this suggested practice But it doesn't mean that if it is not displayed, then the minor works would be deemed invalid. Now, as for the display in terms of the size of the wording, the font, etc., are all specified. For example, they have to be in capital letters, and also a code had been given at the point of notification by the Buildings Department. And that will have to display no less than 35 mm in height. And this will all have to be displayed on that signboard so that any inspection in the future would easily be able to tell that that had been given approval by the Minor Works Control Scheme under the Buildings Department. But let's say it had been approved under the scheme, but there is no such wording display. But we would have information within the department whether that signboard had been approved. We will have that information. 27th of June, 8:30 in the morning. Can it be in the afternoon, Mr. Chairman? I think we may not have the meeting room. Yes, the council will probably be held in the afternoon. So the meeting for us will have to be in the morning. Well, in that case, I cannot come to the meeting. Do make an effort, because it is important. The administration will be providing the promised information, and then we will be going through clause by clause. So do make an effort to be there at the meeting. Any other business? Neil? Any other time slot for the next meeting? I would really want to be present for the meeting, but I do have an appointment on that date. Any other time slots available? Yes, I will talk to the Secretariat. I'm sorry about that, Mr. Chairman. 25th. Not a lot of time slots available. I'm not available on the 25th. Thank you.